Hey everybody, what's up? You know, yesterday I was browsing over at DeviantArt, of course, and one of the people that I subscribe to and am good friends with is GameBoySage. Now I know a lot of you will have your difference of opinions on the character. Hold on for a second. Sorry about that, I had to go check on something, but I know a lot of you who have your difference of opinion on GameBoySage. A lot of you will probably agree with what's in this article right here. This is actually a copy of a little description that GameBoySage put into the description box along with the latest upload at DeviantArt. You see, the latest upload had a picture of Sally sitting down in a chair and basically telling those that have thrown hatred towards her way to come sit down and basically sort things out rationally and try to find a middle ground. Well, here's the thing, folks. We all know certain people will never have middle ground when it comes to this character. But GameBoySage actually did what many have felt is a pretty good example of what's going on. GameBoySage actually took the time out to put in the description box, you know, why. Well, basically, the description is basically the upload is called "Let's Talk," and in the description box, they talk about, you know, why there could be hatred, why certain things are going the way they're. Well, you'll see what I'm talking about, and I'll provide a link down below if you want to read the article yourself while you're listening to me read it, or if you just want to read it yourself after the video. Because I know a lot of you may think I'm making this up, and the truth is I'm not. But this is the article right here. It's called "Let's Talk" by GameBoySage. And this is what GameBoySage says. Again, this is the article, in case some of you don't know. And this is what GameBoySage says in the article. And let me get a swig of coffee here first. There we go. And I quote, this is what GameBoySage put down, not me, GameBoySage. And I quote, "We all know," basically I'm quoting GameBoySage here and what they typed down, and I quote GameBoySage, "We all know there is a lot of Sally hatred out there. Even after she made the ultimate sacrifice and gave up her free will and body to save the entire world, one thing I noticed is that one thing I noticed is that a lot of the time that people try to defend Sally often show her as crying or angry, when in truth the Sally we all know and love would meet this kind of hatred in one way, with a clear, calm mind, and to talk to these people like the diplomat that she is. Whether the people she talks to would be willing to talk about facts and logic, or just stick to the blind hatred through, is entirely up to them." Okay, basically what GameBoySage is saying is that even though Sally made, and I will admit, with Ezekiel 300 here, made the ultimate sacrifice and gave up her free will and body to save the planet, people still hate on her. And there are people that have uploaded pictures of her crying and being angry about how people feel about her. Now, continuing on though, and I quote GameBoySage again, continuing on, "I could see being indifferent to Sally, or having no no real caring about her. But to flat out hate her and want her gone for good, I mean, this is a strong feminine role model. We have a strong feminine role model we have here that honestly cares about her people and is willing to get her hands dirty to save the day. How can you flat out hate her? How can you flat out hate someone like this so badly that you want her dead? So basically, the questions being posed there is, after everything she's done, after proving that character-wise that she is more than just a princess that sits on a throne, is pretty and needs to be rescued because she's a damsel in distress, that after everything she's done, you know, going on missions, physically getting involved, even as I mentioned at the even as GameBoySage mentioned at the beginning, making the ultimate sacrifice by giving up her free will and body for the planet, how can you still hate on her, how can you still want her gone for good, and why do you still want her to be dead? Now I continue on GameBoySage's thing here, and I quote GBS. Below is a little list why I think Sally doesn't deserve the hatred she's been getting for so long now. A lot of which was said in my Derpy/Sally art, with some new material added into it. Now here we go. Now here's one of the reasons, and now, well, basically here's the reasons, I should say. Continuing on, and I quote GBS. Now I've heard quite a few reasons for hating Sally. Many of them double standard nonsense, and others being entirely unfair. The easiest one to disprove is the way she dresses. Why do people follow the belief that male Mobians can be naked, while females have to be fully clothed? Because they have curves? Seems kind of pointless, since they have fur, so you see nothing extra than what you see from a lady wearing a leotard. Or are you saying the female body is something to be ashamed of? Well, I can answer that easily. Myself, I can answer that easily. I have no problem. Because I agree, it's like they're wearing a leotard. Do you see anybody complaining about Cleo from the Cadillac Cats? The majority of the cartoons she was in, complete fur. No one complained then. Now, continuing on, GBS's discussion, or description, or whatever you want to call it, and I quote, as far as she's drawn in the comics, most of the time she's drawn in a chibi form, and only ever so often does she take a more human form, aka Stan Butler, I believe, or Stephen Butler, or whatever his name is. Either way, isn't that something to hate the artist for instead of Sally? Why hate her on how someone chooses to draw her? Why hate a character because of how people choose to draw fan art of her? Wouldn't you have to hate almost every single female character in any franchise ever if that was the case? If she was male, this wouldn't even remotely be an issue to talk about. Don't bother bringing up that it's because the males have animal shapes while females have curves. There are plenty of male characters without clothes that have rather human-looking forms. Try looking up Drago for one. I even have a suspicion, and this is one that I do agree on, and I know a lot of others will. I even have a suspicion that the entire Mecha Sally art, the entire Mecha Sally arc is one very long reason to have Sally start wearing full body, excuse me for a second. Again, let me reread this here, and this is again from GameBoySage. And this is quoting GameBoySage, even I have a suspicion that the entire Mecha Sally arc, which is going on right now, is one very long reason to have Sally start wearing full body clothing when she gets turned back to normal. That's if, when, or should. GameBoySage, I think you should have added that, but that's okay, because I think we all have the answer. Robotnik altered her body. Robotnik, Eggman, alters her body, and now it's covered in all blue instead of her fur clothing. Well, not fur clothing, but instead of her fur coloring. It's pretty obvious that just like when Bunny had a leotard and a belt on when she was de-roboticized, Sally will also be wearing full body clothing when she gets turned back to normal, if, when, and should. Now, continuing on, I hate the idea of Archie falling to peer pressure. That makes no sense. That makes no sense, basically. Okay, let me reread that. GameBoySage is saying, I hate the idea of Archie Comics, falling to peer pressure. That makes no sense. But it's quite likely that by 250, we'll have a Sally with a new design that is fully clothed. So, in other words, you've seen those pictures on DeviantArt, and even one I showed you in a video, what people feel Sally will look like after she's restored. That's what they feel. Okay, let's say she probably has her original hairstyle, right? That's cool, but what they're afraid of is she's going to get full body clothing. And then they put in parentheses here. Well, let me reread that. I hate the idea of Archie Comics falling to peer pressure. That makes no sense, but it's quite likely that by 250 we'll have a Sally with a new design that is fully covered. And then in parentheses, and they kind of put like, those little icons, little faces, the icons like this. You gotta be kidding me kind of deal. That's what it's like. It's like, you gotta be kidding me. Or like, are you serious? Or as the Miz would say, really? 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 And then they put in parentheses here, although why she'd want to wear clothes that she had on due to being Mecha Sally, I don't know. Which is a good point. A very good point there. Which is a very good point. Another reason, continuing GameBoySage here's thing, another reason people pick on Sally is how a handful continuing on GameBoySage, I'm trying to check on my dog there, make sure she's not doing anything she shouldn't. But continuing on GameBoySage's topic here, and I quote, another reason people pick on Sally is how a handful of the male characters seem attracted to her. So why is that a problem again? Exactly how many female characters are attracted to Sonic? Doesn't he have a ton of people, girls, attracted to him as well? Why must Sally be singled out for this? Let's also not forget that virtually anyone besides Sonic that liked her is currently in or was in a relationship with someone else. None of the love interests are pining for Sally, Ellie, and waiting in the shadows to strike. they've started their own relationships with other people. Another way to think about it is, would it be more preferred to have Sonic and Sally fall in love for life right away on day one, or to date other people and find out after time that they truly are made for each other? The latter seems more realistic to me. So, in other words, what GameBoySage is saying is, what is a problem with Sonic and Sally dating in the comics? It doesn't make sense. You know, what, are you hoping for something else? Now, continuing on what GameBoySage is saying, on the same line, people hate her for the simple fact that she's trying to date Sonic, when some claim he only belongs to Amy, or that Sonic shouldn't date at all. Amy didn't even exist in the Saturday AM show, and that's what the comic is based on. This is also not the video game Sonic, but another one entirely, an alternate dimension, if you will. Why are you trying to demand that this Sonic be stuck in the same constraints as the video game, when even Sega, listen to that, when even Sega themselves want the video games and Archie comic to be separated entirely? So in other words, what GameBoySage is pointing out there is, why would anybody want the comics to be based on the video games when the very company that makes the games have come out and said, no, they're separate entities? Why? Alright, well, continuing on, and quoting GameBoySage still, going back to the whole Amy thing though, Sally was around and a potential love interest for Sonic before Amy was even released in a game to be played. Sonic the Hedgehog Issue 0 came out around March 1993, while the game Amy came from was out closer to September of '93. Not only that, but the comic hinted to Sonic and Sally having feelings for each other, while the game made it very clear that Sonic had no feelings for Amy at all. And then they put in parentheses, plus she's technically the same age as Tails. Long story short, Sega themselves, and again, listen to this, Sega themselves said Sonic and Amy will never become a couple. So why hate Sally for dating him when Amy never had a chance to begin with? In other words, if let's say you're a supporter of Sonic and Amy being together, you know, like if you're a supporter of Sonic and Amy being together, you know, why, you know, basically what GameBoySage is saying is, if you're a supporter of Sonic and Amy being together, why can't you understand that even the company that produces the games have said, look, they're never going to be together. It's basically a cat and mouse game with them. It's like, she's the cat, he's the mouse. You know, they're kind of like, let's say, the Tom and Jerry deal, the Wile E. Coyote Roadrunner deal. It's like, you know, Wile E. Coyote is going to keep chasing the Roadrunner, but he's never really going to catch him. You know that Tom and Jerry are going to chase each other, but Tom's never going to really catch him. You see what I'm saying? This is what GameBoySage is trying to point out. Now, continuing on and finishing up, in closing, this is what GameBoySage says in closing, the last paragraph. Why hate the character when it's the writer that makes him do the stupid things? Sally is a good person that has lived her life trying to bring peace and happiness to her people. That while having good points is a believable person. Okay, hold on, let me reread that. Sally is a good person that has lived her life trying to bring peace and happiness to her people. That while having good points is a believable person, that as a believable person, and has her own weaknesses, how can you hate a character like that? Even after Ken Penders and even Ian Flynn turned Sally back to normal, people continue to struggle to find reasons to hate her. I just don't get that. It's quite easy to see what Sally's actual personality is. Even if she has a breakdown from time to time. I mean, come on, guys. She just gave up her body and soul, or free will basically, to save the world. You don't have the selfish, and they put in quotations here, you don't have the, and it's in quotations, selfish card to play anymore at all either. Don't hate the character, hate the writer that ruined the character. And that's what GameBoySage has said. Again, I will provide a link down below for you guys to read this. But the thing is, what GameBoySage is saying here as a fan is, look, all this hatred that fans have for Sally is right now because of what she did. And Ezekiel 300, I know you're watching, I know you'll agree, is pointless. Because basically she just made the ultimate sacrifice to save the planet. Yes, right now she's kind of like imprisoned in her mind. She's kind of like in solitary confinement within her mind. Nobody can hear her, or nobody can be around her. She can't be around anybody. She's alone while the roboticized portion of her mind is controlling, the Eggman roboticized part of her mind is controlling her actions and what she says. Now, GameBoySage also brings up a point that does seem a little suspicious. I mean, why would you, out of all the characters that have been roboticized, Sonic himself, never once has the writers, whether it's been the cartoon or even the show, why would you have a character get modified and weaponized? I mean, I can understand if you want to weaponize her and keep her with the same look she's had. That's what everybody's saying. But to fully overdo it, and sort of give her a new hairstyle a little bit, it's kind of like telling people, when it's all said and done, and if and when and should she be restored, guess what? She's going to have a new look. Look, the thing is, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, if she has a new look, heck, it could just be for maybe 1 or 2 issues, then she'll go back to the way she was. And I'm pretty sure Ian Flynn knows that if he's planning to go in that direction. So, but overall, GameBoySage to me, and I know some people will hate on me for saying this, has brought up some good points. Ezekiel 300, you even have to agree with it. But the thing is, what are your thoughts? What are you, the people watching this video, what are your thoughts? What are you, the people, that if I decide to post the link to this video along with the article on the forums, what are your thoughts? Tell me what you guys think, and I'll talk to you all later. Credit is given to GameBoySage for that article. Peace out.